Please click the subscribe button and the notification icon. It will help us a lot.
Hi, this is Rodrigo from Laika Studios, and this is the Creative Hustler Show. Today's guest is Jenn Ely, or Jenn Ely. She is an amazing illustrator. She's also a production designer and a visual developer, and she has been working with a lot of clients, including Netflix, Laika, Dreamworks TV, and many more. So welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So for the people who don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit more about your history? How did you decide to get into art? Pretty much, how did you get into this point?
Yeah, so I actually was a traditional artist for a long time. My uncle was a billboard painter, and he was the only other person in my family who made art, and I knew that I liked to paint, and I didn't know what else I was going to do with it. So I went to undergrad for traditional art, and then I was a fine art painter for a couple years before I decided to go back to school. I'm kind of the opinion that either you're somebody who really thrives on like collaboration and working with other people, or you're more somebody who wants to make their own thing and they really thrive like getting to kind of go through your own process every day. And I'm very much somebody who likes to kind of like improve based on other people and that kind of feedback and all of that. So I went back to school for illustration, and then kind of like halfway through that at SCAD in Georgia. About halfway through that, I realized that like, oh, all these animated films that I love, there are people that design those, and this is a job you can have, which I hadn't connected yet. So I pursued that pretty hard, pretty quickly, and then got an internship with Laika back in 2012. So I started with Laika as an art intern on the Boxtrolls a little while back, and I've been up here in Portland, Oregon since then. I left after that film and thing mostly. I do a lot of development work with Dreamworks TV. I do a lot of commercials here with House Special, which used to be part of Laika. It used to be called Laika House, and they did all the like the M&M's commercials and that stuff. And I have freelance with Laika. I just came off of a show. I production designed a show at Shadow Machine for it was called The Shivering Truth for Adult Swim, and that was directed by Solen, Vernon, Chatman. And my next project that I'll be starting on next week is with Selick doing design on his next stop motion feature for Netflix. So I'm essentially a designer for animation. I do color, I do environment, sometimes I do characters, but I love stop motion. That's probably my favorite thing, but I've designed for 2D, I've designed for CG. At the end of the day, like, good design is good design. So yeah, I love it. It's really fun, and I'm super excited to keep doing it.
Awesome. So pretty much, I wanted to ask you this, since you already had like a lot of experience into going into this kind of work, into this kind of jobs, but whenever you see people like coming out of college or university and they are trying to get into art as a professional, do you see like mistakes that they commit or common mistakes that they commit that they are not aware that they are making?
I think there's lots of things. There's like macro things, and then there's like micro things, right? So like a stupid micro thing. Like I always notice that a lot of students, when they want to show light, they just add white to the color. And that's like such a nitpicky little detail, but like as somebody who loves color, that makes me crazy. So that's like the nittiest little like technical thing. But then from like another standpoint, just in a macro way, like I think it's really hard as a student. It was for me, and I don't think it's changed, to really figure out what you love and what you want to do and get really specific about it. I think as a student, you're thinking so much like, well, I want to do whatever you'll hire me for. Like, I enjoy all of this, and whatever you're willing to pay me to do, I just want to do the thing. And I think that makes it really hard for us to like see how we could work with you. And I think it's something to really try and fight for, is realizing like what parts of this get me out of bed in the morning. Like, there was a moment early on where I was like, oh, people are getting a lot of jobs in storyboarding. I draw, maybe I should storyboard, whatever it is. And that would be a terrible job for me. And the reason why is because I love color and I love, you know, kind of finishing that thought and that design. And it's about that space and that creation of that one moment for me. I'm not as interested in the camera moves and figuring out the acting and all that stuff, you see. So I think it's a mistake that I would have made early on to go, oh, I'll try to do this too. Whereas if I really broke it down, I'm not as interested in that. And I'm very glad I didn't start trying to get those kinds of jobs because I wouldn't have been as happy, right? So that's something that I'm hearing a lot from other professionals and recruiters too, is just kind of like they wish a lot of the time that students would find a way to figure out what they want to do instead of just trying to show you what I think you want to see. And I think that's the same, even if you know you want to be like a designer, if you know you want to be in visual development, not looking at what's popular now, because a lot of art is looking the same. That's something that's being talked about a lot too. And it's hard because you've got Twitter and Instagram and all these things, and it's so accessible to see like all the things that are being made. And I think the danger of that is this like homogeneity, right, that starts to happen where there really isn't a distinct voice. And I think something really exciting when you see a new artist's work is seeing their point of view, seeing their perspective, and seeing something that only they could have made. And I think so much of that is about, you know, getting off the internet for a minute and making things because you love them. Like you're really drawn to this house down the block for whatever reason, and you make a painting about that, or you know, whatever thing you get excited about and just want to draw, that really points you in a direction. And I think trying to quiet down the anxiety and hear that is really important.
Yeah, I think something that I've seen, and I think I'm getting to that point as well, is that when I started these interviews, many people started telling me that they can notice when they see a portfolio that is made to try to bait them into hiring them.
Yeah.
They can see also what is a portfolio that has passion into it, and it is for people who have experience and who are watching through a lot of portfolios every day, every week, every month. Like they get really good at recognizing who is showing you something that they are passionate about, or who is just showing you something that just for the sake of getting the job, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's even trends in content, or like, you know, it's funny. I was just talking about this the other day because there'll be these trends like in like greeting cards and little gifts and stuff. You'll see trends of certain animals. Like right now, llamas are everywhere. I don't know if this is just in Portland. It kind of goes in waves, but it's like there was a moment where it was sloths, you know, and a moment where it was squirrels, I think, and narwhals, and now it's llamas right now. It's like llamas are everywhere you turn. And it's a funny thing where that happens, where it's like, ooh, this person did that cool thing and that worked. And then everybody kind of, and it gets so loud that like, even if you do an amazing llama, I've seen 92 llamas today. And like you have to try and fight for being able to hear your own voice, being able to hear your own interests, and, you know, not being sidetracked by what you see getting attention online and those kinds of things. And it's not that, you know, making the popular looking thing is bad. Like, but I think this job is hard. Any creative job is hard. It's a struggle. And I think for you to put in the work you need to put in to have security and get where you need to be, you need to really love it. And I think that is about being able to have a really, really open, honest ability to know what you love. And that's not as easy as it sounds. Like I have to, even still, if I start a new job and I'm like really impressed, like okay, so like this Wendell Wild thing, like it's Henry Selick, who of course is like a god of stop motion, and Lou Romano is the production designer, and I've been a huge fan of Lou Romano forever, and it sometimes you have a point in the beginning where you're getting so anxious about what you think they want to see, and you never know anyway. Like whatever you're going, oh, I think they want to see this, you're wrong. Like you can't actually divine that because you're not that person. And so what I've learned is like if I take a step back and go, okay, let me make something that I really love. Let me make something that surprises and excites me, which is hard enough, right? If I can do that, it usually goes over much better. If I spend too much time thinking about how it's going to be received, then it's not genuine and it's flat somehow. So, and beyond that, if you make the thing that you really love and are excited about, say that person doesn't respond to it. Well, that probably just means it's a bad fit for you, right? Because at the same time as, you know, your enthusiasm indicates whether a thing is good or bad, it also tells you what you like and what you care about, and like, that's valid, that's important, and it tells you where you should be and who you should work with. Like, after a couple of years of being able to do that, I now realize, like, I am probably a little more independent. I'm probably maybe never going to be as like mainstream and you know, clean and all of those things, and I kind of embrace that because this is what makes me happiest. It doesn't mean anything good or bad about either side. It's just knowing yourself, and then what you make, if you love it, will attract more people who want you to do the thing you love. And I think that's what you're fighting for always, is like honesty in the work that you make, so that the people who come to you are coming to you for you. They're not coming to you to like do the best, you know, Victoria Ying impression or whatever thing, you know. So I think that's really important, but I think it's so much harder than it sounds.
Definitely, and there is also the technical fact, let's say, as you mentioned, that you don't know what the director is thinking. You cannot read his mind. Now, even in projects which we have worked, which are simpler than that, well, we have maybe an idea of what we want for a design, for a character, something like that. Then somebody comes with their own design, and it's like, oh, this is so much better than the thing that I had in mind, and this works. So let's use this. So that is something that I think also escapes people's mind, the possibility that the thing that you're passionate about might actually be better than what they are looking.
Yeah, I think if you can surprise people, especially if you can surprise yourself, I think I do want to add, like, I think one of the major steps to that is like really falling in love with the process of research and reference hunting, because I think that's what makes or breaks you, right? It's like being able, in some ways, as a designer, you're almost a curator of reference as much as you are a creator. And I think being able to fall in love with that process and being able to leave room to like find new ideas that you're excited about and kind of find a way to gel those things together in this potion only you could make, that's where you're going to get results. Like if the person giving you that assignment already knew what it should look like or what they were going to get back, that would be pretty boring, and they could probably just do it themselves, right? Like, they're expecting you to go and explore and go find something, go find your solution to this problem. And that is what it should be, is like, you know, you kind of synthesizing the stuff that you're responding to. And that doesn't mean like other people's artwork or any of that. It means like, where are the places that this would come from? What are the inspirations for how this would be designed? How has this been designed before? And I think that's a big cornerstone of it, of just like, you know, really, really embracing the research and the dedication to like get specific and get moved by what's been made in the world.
Definitely. Also, something, and this is going to be tricky. Many times when I started a project or wanted to chase through a client or something like that, I have in my head like things that can go wrong or things that are going to be hard, and sometimes something that I never even thought about comes up, and that is way harder than the things that I actually thought, and the things that I thought about that were going to be hard end up not being hard at all. Like for example, for many years, and I think this is for everybody as well. Like I thought that reaching big time directors or animators would be like really hard, and then I sent an email and it's like, oh, many of them are saying yes, and we have the interviews, and it's like, okay, now I'm learning from these guys that wasn't that hard as I thought it would be. But on that topic, what was something that you never thought about, you didn't even expect it, that was going to come up in your career, that came up and is really important in what you do?
I mean, there's been so many. I think for me, well, I'll start with this kind of side thing, talking about what you're talking about. I think that we are really good at protecting ourselves by scaring ourselves out of even trying a thing, by going, it's not going to work anyway, and that's good enough reason to not try to do it, because it's better to just like count myself out preemptively and be so smart to do that than like experience rejection, right? Which is so sad. If you think about that, it's like, that is relentlessly sad. Like, I guess like for me, at one point, it was like, okay, I would rather follow my face myself and know 100% that I can't make this thing that I want happen than talk myself out of it, or even worse, let somebody else talk me out of it. Because I think you don't know till you try. The world is small. All those people that you look up to are just people. And at the end of the day, like, the only way to 100% guarantee you can't have that thing is to not even try to do it. But so kind of moving on from that, I would say when I first I was always really concerned about the work, and I still am. Like, the work is the most important thing to me. But I guess I never expected or thought about the social side of that as much as I did after I got my first gig at Laika. One of the things I noticed is that I came into that space and it was like, there were all these relationships and there was all this history with everybody, right? It's like, you know, I worked in the art department, but you would see like this person from the art department that was really good friends with this person who worked over in rapid prototyping, having lunch or whatever. And it was like, there were all these relationships and all this history, and these people were friends, and you felt so, like, as a newcomer, it felt so weird to be kind of outside of that and feel like, oh man, I'm never gonna know anybody or like have that kind of camaraderie thing that these people have. And that always felt so foreign to me, especially after I left and started freelancing, because I work from home a lot. And then as a designer, you just don't get to, by default anyway, come in contact with as many people. Like, a lot of times if I'm PD on a commercial, I'm pretty much only interacting with the producer and the director, right? So you feel like you're going to be kind of shut out of this world. And what I've found is just by being friendly and being interested and asking people about their lives and about their job and about, you know, what they do, because I am interested. Like, when I go onto a stop motion set and there's somebody's entire job is making tiny costumes, that is ridiculously interesting. And I do have questions about that. And so it's been one of these things where what I've noticed is, like, one, so much of your career comes from who you meet and who you get to know, which I wouldn't have thought before. And I don't mean that in like a, you know, nepotism kind of way. I mean that in just like you're going to interact with these people again, you're going to see them again, and being a good person, being a kind person, being somebody who is interested and who sees the value of other people all the way down to PAs is going to pay off over and over again, because it's going to make people trust you and want to work with you and want to share with you and collaborate with you, because it is a collaborative medium. So I guess, like, for me, I just never thought so much about how important it was to come in with a collaborative spirit and come in with an open curiosity about other people and their roles and the thing that you're making together. And that has become such a central thing for me at this point, because now, I mean, I kind of just had this experience the other day where I went back into a studio that I hadn't been into in a minute, and I was like, wow, it's just so great, because now it's like this family reunion every time I go into a place. And I think that's such a wonderful feeling, and it's part of why you get into this job, part of why you want to be collaborative, right, is to like feel like you're doing this thing together. And I think the best jobs are when you get to have that with the crew.
Yes, definitely. And in this art, I used to be like into the technical entrepreneurship kind of thing, like developing apps and things like that. And even though they were like introverts, let's say, there were many introverts inside the tech industry. At least they had like kind of this cold logic kind of thinking that they understood that socializing was part of the job. Like,
Yeah.
and if you could talk to them like, uh, okay, like you need to understand that a company is like a set of people, and if these people like you, then you get more jobs or you can advance and things like that. Okay, they get it. Like if you just go and talk to them from a very logical point. And when I started into animation and started meeting people in the art industry, I started realizing that even though there were a lot of introverts as well, they were a little bit more emotional than logical, and this
Yeah.
kind of appeal. And for me, it also I had to deal with a type of phase of adaptation to that because I got used to the entrepreneurship kind of mindset and the technical kind of mindset, and these people are just like, okay, we have this goal to do. What are the obstacles? This is. Okay, let's tackle these obstacles and let's do this thing, and that's it. Like that's the kind of
Yeah.
thinking. And emotional introverts are like, oh, I really feel bad about talking to people, and I don't want to do it, and I'm comfortable being not sociable and things like that. And I started noticing certain things like they have this thinking in their head that, let's say, for example, Disney or like this is a like a entity that is not people, and let's say
Right.
if you apply to this job and they reject you, they think like Laika as a whole, for example, have rejected
Yeah.
them. Like if all the people in Laika just watch their portfolio and say like, no, you're a bad artist, let's go in unison. Like it's not like that. It's like, or maybe you just got like a nature agent that was in a bad mood that day and you were the lucky one who got rejected, or maybe that person that made the interview to you that didn't like your art, and that is just one person, but still you can get feedback on what to improve. And and when I try to talk to them like to introverts in the art world, and and make them understand like, look, you gotta socialize, you gotta meet people, like this is a team effort, like you need to, if you really want to be a professional into this, you need to start socializing. They put a lot of resistance to that, but again, like for me it is hard to explain it to them because again I'm more like the technical kind of guy, and I try to
Well,
apply logic. But
it's funny because I think that that's what's hard, right? It's the words that we use to talk about that. Because I think the second you say networking or socializing or any of those things, those are awful. I hate thinking about that. It puts a weird pressure on me. Like every social interaction, I am a very anxious person, and I'm somebody who beats themselves up a lot about every interaction. Like I'll probably walk out of this interview going, "Oh God, I shouldn't have said that thing," and what about this? Because that's who I am, and I do it with everybody. I had a lunch the other day with a director I've worked with for years, and I left it going, "Oh God, that person's never going to talk to me again." And it's like, no, that's just in your head, but. I will say, like, I think the answer to both is very similar in that, like, we get so focused. It actually happened when I first got to Laika. This kind of happened to me. I was so focused on me and worried about my impression on everybody else that it didn't occur to me that, oh wait, this is a whole building of really introverted, as you said, animation nerds, right? So we're all suffering and bouncing off each other all day long, right? And so you kind of get locked up in your own pain and anxiety and forget about everybody else's. And I think sometimes the answer is to not think about the selfish aspect, not think about what you're getting out of it or what you're trying to do. Anytime you're going to try to do something involving someone else's unwilling participation, that's not going to work because it feels disingenuous, right? And it is. And I think the easiest way around it, the easiest way to have a pure interaction with somebody, knowing that it is kind of for it's hard because you know that it's for your career benefit to talk to people. So how do you make that not a disingenuous interaction, right? But I think what's important is that you talk to somebody because you're genuinely interested in what they do. And when you mount a conversation, it's not to see what you can get out of it. It's to go, hey, you can express appreciation. Hey, I watched this thing that you did. I think it's amazing. If you have questions about it, that's even better. Like, who doesn't want to be seen for what they actually do and doesn't want to engage about something they're passionate about? We all want that, right? So I think instead of thinking about you and what you can get out of anything, just know that it's a good way to approach life, to meet people with what's good for them and what they're interested in. And I think if you can do that, a lot of times they reciprocate. A lot of times they ask you questions back and all of that, and that's where it makes it natural. But I think to want to be in this business at all, you must have some sort of artistic curiosity. You know, you must have a passion for these things that these people make. And so I think if you focus on that part and just trying to learn and understand and see what people bring to the table, I think then you don't have to think about the socializing part. It kind of takes care of itself to a point. I mean, that's just my opinion on it, but I think I also get stressed if I feel like somebody comes up to me and they're approaching me just to like have the networking thing happen. And it's so much better if somebody goes, oh, hey, I saw that thing. Like, this part was really cool. Can you talk to me about how you did that? Like, that just gives such a natural, easier way. Let me talk about the thing that I feel like I actually know about rather than having to try and make small talk stranger in a kind of contrived scenario. Like, that's still hard, right? Yeah, so I think being grateful and being interested take care of so much of that.
Definitely. I think even though I have like this kind of very technical kind of thinking, I still have this unfair advantage on that area that you just mentioned because, well, I come from a third world country. Like if things went as they should have been, I should be in a call center. So for me, like being able to talk to you and when I go to events like CTN or now Lightbox that is going to open, things like that. Like when I go to these places, I meet people, and I'm really happy. Like because for me, like it's kind of a miracle that thanks to technology, I'm able to do these things, right? And I also, I had a passion. Well, have a passion for animation since I can remember, and the only reason why I wasn't able to pursue art itself was because internet wasn't what it is right now when I was coming out to the real world and I had to take other things, right? But I still have a lot of passion for art, for the work that people do, and of course when I meet people and learn from them, like I'm really curious to learn from them. I'm really happy to meet them, and I think on that side, like my happiness overthrows any kind of fear, and that's my own personal advantage, I think. But other people, yeah, as you say, is they get more nervous than happy, I think.
Yeah, I think if you put too much focus on yourself, how could you not? You know what I mean? If you're thinking about you and what you need and all the expectations you have about this interaction, that's too much. That's too much pressure for you and for the other person. It's too much. And it's hard. It's again, it's like that whole listening to yourself thing, like getting to that place where you can just have that genuine interaction takes some practice. And I think one of the best things you can do is just keep trying, right? I think, you know, I know there's a certain amount of pain, at least for me, in like pushing myself to talk to someone new or do any of that. There still is, but I will say every time you do it, it gets a little easier. Every time you experience it, you kind of find your ways to deal with the hard parts. So I think it's worth it in the end for all the anxiety it causes. And it is necessary if you want to collaborate, unfortunately. If, you know, I know that can be really hard for people, but.
Yeah. And let's say if you were to meet a young, driven student with a lot of talent who wants to follow a similar path, professionally speaking, as you have, what advice would you give that person, and what advice should they ignore?
So is this somebody who just got out of high school, somebody in college?
Somebody who, yeah, somebody who just got out of college or university and is about to enter the real world, let's say.
Yeah. So the first thing is to figure out who you're like. Well, first of all, I would say figure out your like top 10 artists of all time. And I'm not talking about animation, just like generally, like of all the art you've seen, of all the stuff, like what really moves you? What are your top 10? And then maybe after that, do an animation version of like, okay, who are the top 10 people doing what you want to do right now? Who has the career that you want, right? And I think that's going to tell you so much about yourself. It's going to tell you so much about what you enjoy. I think you look at that and then you look at the work you're making, right? And you go, okay, if I really love this, why am I making this? Like for me, I really love Christian Andersen in kids' books. He does all these collage things and they're so beautiful. I love Miroslav Sasek. I love all these people who are so graphic. And I do come from a traditional painting background, but when I first got into animation, I think I felt like I had to work digitally all the time. And I do a big mix of both, working in stop motion. Again, thank goodness I get to use some of that other side too. But I kind of got away from myself for a minute and I kind of stumbled a little. Again, trying to make what I thought would make me successful. And I think constantly reassessing, what am I drawn to look at? What are the things that move me? What are the kind of things I wish I had made? And really breaking those down and going, okay, like how are these things similar? What am I seeing a trend of? Like what movies do I love? What do I wish I had made? And who are the people making that and what does their work look like? And I'm not saying to copy their work so much as just to go and look at the tone of that and look at, you know, the level of detail. Go get the art of books and see how they got there. You know, I think all of those things are what's important. I think really, really be a steward of your own direction. Then from there, you can go and you can look at like, okay, say your model is me. Say you really want to do the things that I've done, which was your prompt to begin with. I do have a lot of traditional art skills, and I think that helps a lot with stop motion. I think that being able to sculpt and knowing how a form turns in space and you know, traditional painting, those kinds of things, knowing how something might be practically built, that makes me a better designer for stop motion. That helps me understand that a little bit better. But I also think if you want to do that, I think knowing that like if you're constantly pursuing making the best work you're capable of and sharing that, I just don't think that we have enough trust that if we make the work, people will show up. Because I think that's absolutely true. Like, I think I used to worry. So one thing that happened, like after I left Laika, and then I went up and I was color stylist. Well, so when I left Laika, they just didn't really have an art position for me on the next thing. And I had been a PA after being an intern, and I felt really like, oh man, this was such a great experience, but I'm around all this art every day, and I think I'd be too frustrated to come back and try to be a PA again. Like I'm so grateful for the time I did that, and I think it was really good for me, but I knew that in order to get where I wanted to be, I needed to be making art all the time. And I didn't want to be so close to it and not get to touch it, right? So I left, and when I left, I felt like, oh God, like I'm not going to be able to get anything else. I was so stupid to walk out of there. What was I doing? But within like a month or two, somebody from Dreamworks called me and they're like, hey, you know, we've been looking at your stuff. We like your color sensibility. Would you want to be color stylist? I was color stylist on The Adventures of Puss in Boots, which is a TV show for Netflix, just in the beginning, kind of briefly. And it was because even while I was interning and being a PA at Laika on Boxtrolls and all that, I was making my own work and I was putting it online. And the work that I was making was just stuff to learn. Like I would make a painting, like when I first moved here, I was overwhelmed by the fact that we live in the middle of a forest. I don't know if you've ever been to Portland, but it's like, I grew up in the South and it's very brown everywhere. And here it's like trees and beautiful plants everywhere. And that was crazy to me. And so I made this whole painting about that, just trying to capture that feeling of like, what is this and what does it feel like? So it was like me asking myself questions that I was interested in and making work that I was excited about. And it didn't occur to me that I was making that work to get another job. I was just making it because I liked making it. And somebody had seen it and they found me. And when I left Laika, I also sent work. I tried to interview with How Special, which was technically part of Laika. So you would think as somebody who was a Laika employee that like, oh yeah, I could go and talk to them and that's no big deal. I sent an email. I might have sent a couple emails and I never heard back. So it was really, I couldn't force that situation, right? So I left, I went and did Puss in Boots for a little bit, which I was so grateful that they kind of found me and made me feel like, oh, I can get art jobs. And then I left there and came back to Portland, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought, oh, am I going to have to move to LA? I don't know, because there wasn't much in town other than Laika. And I got a call from How Special at this point because they had just separated from Laika, and they found my work on Twitter. So I had been in their company and I had tried to approach them in my way, but it didn't work for them, probably because they probably weren't looking for my job at that point, or just, you know, bandwidth can be the issue a lot of the time. But just because I had kept making work and putting it online, they found me. And they were like, oh, hey, we just saw, are you here in Portland then? Because we have this thing and we think you might be a good fit. And it just lined up. And I've had a multi-year relationship with them, doing tons of freelance for them. And it's not something I could have crafted, right? It was, for me, about doing that work and putting it online and it being seen. I just worked with a studio this year in London, and I still don't know how they found me, Locksmith Animation, and I was doing development work on a film for them with some people that are like heroes of mine. I have no idea how they found my work, but it has to be just from consistently making stuff, putting it online. You know what I mean? So I think losing sight of trying to craft where your world's going to go, and again, making art that genuinely interests you is going to attract the right things to you. And for me, that's what has always worked, is like, the more honest artwork I can make, the more the right people, the people I really want to be working with, find me.
Yes, definitely. And I think also, thanks to social media, it is really easy to fall into the trap of trying to make illustrations in order to get followers.
Yeah,
and
totally.
there is a huge difference between having a lot of followers just because they like your art but are not willing to buy it, and having people following you who actually can help you or are willing to buy. And this is a distinction I think not many people make. I have friends who have created fan pages and Instagram accounts going into the hundreds of thousands followers, and when they try to sell something, nobody buys. And then I have people who have maybe just 1,000 likes or something like that, but every time that they try to push to sell something, like, most of them buy. and there is that a very strong distinction between people who follow you because they want to hire you than just follow you because it's kind of nice.
I mean, I still fight myself with this all the time. And for me, the pressure is always, I have such limited time outside of like work, and I can't share so much of the work that I do that I always feel this pressure to like make something, like, because in my mind, I'm like, man, everything on my website is years old and I'm so much better than that now, and I can't share any of it. And there's all this pressure in my mind, but then I think about it and it's like, what's funny about it now is like, the people that I work with, and also the people who are my favorite artists, some of them have almost no, like, they actually have a Twitter or have whatever. Like Chris Appleholm has very few followers, and he's one of my favorite artists. He did so much of the art from Fantastic Mr. Fox and Coraline and all these things, just as one example. He's incredible. He's like, I would love to be him when I grow up, kind of thing. Followers don't mean anything. It means nothing. And I would say that when I was found, by House Special, for example, I didn't have a lot of followers. I mean, depending on who you're comparing me to, I don't have that many followers now. It's like, it's not about how many, and you have no idea who's watching. And that's the thing. That's an external focus, right? That is something that's going to take away the purity of what you're trying to make. And I think your job is to try and push that down as much as possible and not listen to it, because you cannot control any of that. And so you gotta be able to let it go and shut it down in your mind, because it's not helpful. It's not helpful to you on any level. And I think, putting that away and being able to craft something to the point that you feel really proud of it is what it's about. And you never know, like, who's gonna see it. If you have 2 followers, that might be all it takes. Maybe the right person sees that thing, It's just like, I always equate like social media with like fishing, right? It's like, because I meet a lot of students who don't want to put a portfolio up or don't want to put a social media page up yet because they're not ready yet. My least favorite thing from students is not ready yet. I hate that. I don't feel ready yet. You're never going to feel ready. That's not your job to decide. Let the world decide when you're ready. I think it's important, if you want to have the biggest pile of fish, to start fishing. Because even if you're just getting 1 or 2 fish a day now, if you started a year ago, you have a lot more fish than if you wait and start when you feel like you're ready and you miss 365 fish, right? It's like, why not start and let people see you grow and start to interact with other people and start to build it? I think it's not about being perfect and presenting yourself to the world. It's sharing the things that you make and using that to grow and learn and having it be about that experience. And if and when other things come from that, that's great. But it can't be your goal. Because again, that's disingenuous too, right? So, yeah, I mean, as much as you can shut that stuff down, it's great. And I think a big following is awesome, but it really doesn't translate like to necessarily jobs. Like this guy that I work with who's brilliant. It's the first guy I ever worked for in animation. He was an art director of Boxtrolls, and he was art director on the Isle of Dogs for Wes Anderson. And he's amazing. And he has this Instagram that, like, I don't know, maybe 100 people that know him privately follow. And he keeps getting amazing jobs. He keeps doing cool stuff. Like, it really is not an indicator of anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, for example, something that I got it very early when I was starting to do these interviews was, for example, Brenda Chatman.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any social media, or well, she has, but it's like very
She like
blogs,
blogs, right? Doesn't she have like a blog thing? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. And, and no Instagram account, no Twitter, no. Her Facebook is very private, so there's not too many followers in there, and she's Brenda Chatman.
Yeah. Yeah, it does not. It just doesn't matter. You know, it can be useful, and some people really enjoy it. Some people really like that interaction and like tweeting and like, oh, this is just a fun part of their day. And some people are forcing it and feel like they have to do it. And I don't think you have to do it, but I do think if you make work and you want to be hired for the work you make, you have to share it. You have to get it out into the world. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I think you should find your way to do that. But I think you can't blame anybody else for not getting the things you want if you don't share what you make, right? So.
Definitely. And on the topic of pretty much failure, have you ever had like a failure or an apparent failure that actually set you up for success in the future?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I missed the second part of your question earlier, which was what advice to listen to or not listen to, like that kind of thing. And that plays very heavily into this. So it has been my experience that there are a lot of people who feel that it's doing you a favor to tell you what you can't do. I come across this a lot. I don't think it's unique to me, where someone will sit you down, you know, and they're just trying to help. And it's like this thing that you want to do, you know, I understand, you got everybody, we all have our dreams, but maybe you should go do this instead because I just don't think that's going to happen. And I really hate that. I really hate that. I don't think anybody should try to tell anybody else what they're capable of. I think that we all start in one place and end up somewhere else. And for you to assume you know when you meet somebody in the middle of their timeline where it's going to end up is incredibly arrogant. I've had classes with people where we came in and there was somebody next to me who was like, wow, this person's so talented. And their talent was enormous, absolutely. Whereas this other person in the room, you know, their work kind of wasn't up to snuff, right? But then through the course of that class, this person didn't really have any interest in growing because they felt like they were already there. And this person who maybe wasn't that great or wasn't that excited about their work in the beginning grew so much in that class period that I'm like, man, that person could just, I'm a couple classes down the line, be way ahead of this person just because they're putting in the work and they're open to the feedback and all that stuff. So I think that you have to take people's advice with a grain of salt. I've had multiple people tell me that I was never going to be able to do this thing that I wanted to do. And especially when I was in college, I was sat down by the Dean of Communication Arts and told, you know, hey, Jen, you know, you're good, but not great. I was applying for the internship with Laika, and I was applying for a couple other animation internships, and I was really hoping one of these things would go, and I was really trying to plan my future around like, no, I want to be in one of these studios I'm really excited about. I want to be in animation. And that to me wasn't a question. It was like, okay, I'm going to try it, and if it doesn't work, I'll try this thing. And it was very much like, okay, I'm just going to keep throwing rocks at it until it happens. But to him, it was like, I feel like I need to give you some tough love and be the one to tell you, like, I just don't see this happening, and I don't want you to be upset by that. So, you know, I still want to help you. I still think you're great. Like, there's this opportunity. I have a friend, and they work in licensing for Disney, and they essentially put Donald Duck on lunchboxes, and we think that, you know, I could probably help you get into that, you know, just as somewhere to go. And basically telling me, like, you're trying all this thing, and you're really swimming out of your depth. And I just remember being so frustrated because you're so scared of that all the time in the back of your own head all the time of like, oh man, am I reaching for something I'm never going to get? When somebody else piles onto it, it's so hard not to listen to it. And I think that can only work if you let it in. You know, I think what I said to him at the time was, you know, I really appreciate it, because I did. I think in his mind, he was trying to help me. I believe that. You know, he wasn't trying to hurt me. But I said, you know, I would really like to fall on my face myself. I would like to put it out there and have it returned to me and rejected before I decide that it's not going to happen. I don't want you or me to talk me out of this. And I ended up getting that internship with Laika a couple weeks later. But it's like, you could listen to somebody who wants to say that stuff to you and never try. And that's really dangerous. That's really terrible to like really count yourself out before you even give it a shot. And so I also just think that like rejection, all rejection means is like, it didn't happen this time. And it's like that email I sent to How Special, like at that time, it didn't connect. It didn't happen. It wasn't even a rejection. It was like a complete non-response, right? And so I could have looked at that and gone, oh man, I'm terrible. Nobody's ever going to want to work with me, so I should just stop right here. But it was like, no, okay, I tried that. That didn't work. To me, it's always like, okay, if the door is locked, go around back. Is there another door? Are there windows over here? Can you construct a ladder? You know, like, okay, this trajectory, this attempt, and this point did not happen. What else can I do? You know, because you are in charge of it to some degree. Like, if you keep putting quarters in the gumball machine, eventually you'll get the color gumball you want, right? But you are responsible for continuing to put quarters in there, and it is sacrifice and it is time, and it's not easy, but it can be done.
Yeah, definitely. I usually, from time to time, people come to me with advice for entrepreneurship and kind of things, and in some cases it takes more time than another, but there is always this point where maybe they want to do something right, and a strategy specifically in a certain type of industry or something like that, which in my experience doesn't work. But I asked them in that moment, like, look, do you want to do this fast, or are you not hurried? Because if you want to take your time, then do it. Go ahead and do it. Because, and the reason why I tell them is because even though in my experience that strategy or maybe that approach doesn't work, it also is possible that maybe it didn't work for me because I didn't have the skill set to pull it through. And I never know who is going to be the one that actually has the skill set to actually do something that I wasn't able to do. And I tell them that because I have seen it myself, like people, and when it comes to this point where, and if people tell me like, look, I'm just going to keep doing my actions and doesn't have to bring results right away, then I just leave them be and let them explore and let them experiment, and then we can go into the feedback and see what can be improved. But because there is always the possibility that maybe this person is the 1%, is the one in 1,000 people who can actually make this happen. And yeah. I had those experiences in my life already, where I met somebody who everybody is telling them like, not sometimes in a very crude way, but not always. Most of the time, is kind of telling them that they are not doing good in life, in anything, and they are pretty much useless. and I kind of teach them some skills, or kind of orient them into the way of thinking, and then they go and pretty much leave me speechless of the things that they were able to achieve. And it's like, wow. And this is the hard part. Like, you never know when you're in front of a person, or you never know if you are the person who can actually pull this through.
Right. Well, and you never know. That's one of the things that's hardest about reviewing people's work is like, I don't ever want to be the person that limited you or made you feel like you couldn't do a thing. I always feel like it's definitely the responsibility of the reviewer to make it clear that, like, all these things I'm saying are my opinions. And I come to this with my own baggage of the things that I like, the things, I've taught classes, and it's like, I have a very specific thing that I like, and that might not be the kind of work that you're interested in, and that's okay. So I always try to, like, leave room for the fact that, like, well, I think this, but, I come to it from this angle. So you absolutely can come to it from another angle and reach a totally different conclusion and still be right. Right? So I just think nobody should be telling somebody, oh, well, you can't do this. Well, you've got no business doing that. It's like, no, I'm going to give you the best feedback I can give you, but it is definitely through my own filter. And so you have to make those final decisions on your own. You have to make those final assessments of, like, that's why it's good to get a lot of opinions and, be able to be really honest with yourself and be able to look at people who are doing the job that you want to do and compare your work to theirs in an honest way. Like, at the end of the day, you are the arbiter of all the advice and commentary that you receive, right? So you have to filter that and go, is that right? Is that useful? And I meet students who've been given terrible reviews or had horrible things said to them. And sometimes that person was just having a bad day, or who knows, how they were talked to 2 minutes ago by whatever person. Like, sometimes you just have to chalk it up to, you know what? Me and that person were not on a good bandwidth, and it wasn't going to work out. I think there's a difference in getting criticism and feedback of how you can do things better and being told there's no value to you in this industry. And one of those things should never be said, because you have no idea what that person is capable of. They're coming to you to get feedback to how to be better. Your only job is to tell them how to take the next step. It doesn't matter where they are on that ladder. You know what I mean? And I think that's on the reviewer to, like, make sure that they're never that person. But it can be hard. There can be days when it's tough, when you've got back to back reviews. It's hard. So leave a little room for that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I come from that experience, actually. Pretty much all my school time was being told that pretty much I was stupid because also my fault. I wasn't paying attention to classes. I was drawing while the teacher was giving classes. I was failing 2 to 4 classes per year, and I had always to take, like, an extra course to try to fix my grades and go to the next year. Pretty much since I was once I got into 7th grade, I failed all the way up until I graduated.
I failed art class in 8th grade, so I'm right there with you. I failed art class, and the reason that I failed is because I would add stuff to the projects, like I would do extra stuff, and so the teacher would accuse me of not listening, and it wasn't that. I was just excited and I wanted to do more stuff. But I'm with you. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, and those people who are giving you grades and all that are also people, and they're bringing whatever they bring to it. One failure doesn't mean anything to 20 failures, 85 failures. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, definitely.
Doesn't matter.
And I even had, when I kind of did graphic design for about 2 years, and then I dropped out. But I even had a teacher that later, many years later, I learned that pretty much she was really bad at what she did at her art. And she also had, like, really brutal teachers so they were they were drilling her a lot, and they were really cruel with the reviews. And the sad part is that she came out and she didn't find a job, so she started, she became a teacher. And because she spent, 7 years being treated that way, in her head, that was the way that you taught art to others. So she went and started treating, horrible all the other students, even if the students were good, because in her mind that's the way that you taught design, and it was like brutal, and it was for me it was weird because things got so bad that when I started like doing entrepreneurship and then putting the studio, that I read this article of the top 15 fears of the people who want to do and pursue their path, and I started reading all the fears that pretty much stop people, and I was like, well, this is my life already. So there's nothing like if this is the worst thing, like then there is nothing to lose, and I
Right,
doing this.
right. Like that is the worst scenario is you come up against people who are going to tell you that you can't do it or that they don't like your work or just be horrible to you. And it's like, if you can endure that, like that happens to everybody. I don't think anybody skates by without some experiences like that. When I first started at Laika, there was a guy that, I was below everybody because I was an intern. And there was one guy who would say to me, he had come from LA, and, it was always said that LA was like, people were way harder on especially PAs and that kind of thing. And you have it easy being up in Portland because people are a little more laid back. And it was like, I apologize for the cursing, but he used this phrase, he would say, shit rolls downhill. And he would say that as basically like saying like, I'm going to be hard on you for the sake of being hard on you because that's how it works. If you're at the bottom, we should treat you poorly because that's the process you have to go through. And it's like, but you don't have to, because I've seen incredible, talented people be incredibly kind and respectful to PAs and interns and those kinds of people. You don't have to perpetuate that. Like there are certain people who have an attitude of like, life is hard, so it's my responsibility to prepare you for that. And it's like, no, life is hard because people like you feel like it's your job to pass on misery. You don't have to be like that. You don't have to be, cracking the whip at people who don't deserve it. You can be supportive and friendly and still give people the feedback that maybe is not always glowing. Like you can tell somebody what things they need to improve on without being cruel, without tearing them down. Like there is room for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like life is really hard. Well, I can come from a third world country, and I can tell you I have some nightmare histories to tell. But that being said, even if life is hard, like there is unescapable suffering, let's call it. Like for example, you got sick and you have to be hospitalized. Like no amount of money can save you from that. Eventually your parents are gonna die, so again, no kind of money is going to save us from that, or we are going to have to face through things. And then there is the unnecessary suffering, which is like people with this kind of attitude have like create pretty much. It's like, well, yeah, life is hard, you don't have to make it harder. Idiot.
Right. Like who goes, life is so hard, I'm going to be a part of that. Like that's such a disconnected, weird thing. The good news is that in my experience, people who work in animation are some of the kindest, most supportive, warm people. Like it's really an amazing thing. You do occasionally have a jerk or somebody like that, but they usually don't last very long. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a history, and there are things we're going through now with Me Too and all of that, where some things are being corrected, and I'm really grateful for that. So I'm not going to sit here and act like the animation industry is perfect, because it's not. It's not. But I do think the amount of people that are genuinely open and interested and wanting to help each other out and all of that is really astonishing. And I think that it's such an open, warm community that's built on collaboration and, lifting each other up. And I felt that a lot in my career, and I'm so grateful for it. They're very giving.
Yeah, I think, unluckily, I think the internet, even though has improved a lot of things, it has also worsened others. So, for example, I think one of the tragedies of today is pretty much that because the internet is robbing the audiences from the news network, they are getting desperate and they are trying to get ratings by enraging people and showing the bad thing, because if the people feel bad, then they are more willing to share, and that's more clicks, more audience. And the news are constantly showing like bad things and racism and people being horrible, and it affects people because I know many talented people from here in Latin America, and they have this idea like, I have fear of trying to enter this industry in the U.S. because all the racism. It's like, what fucking racism? I haven't never like I have already now about 3 years of being very active into meeting people in the animation and illustration community. I have never had a bad experience inside it.
That's
Never.
wonderful. That's really wonderful. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. Okay. I'll be upfront and say I've had to deal with some situations involving sexism and harassment. That has come up for me. And I will still sit here and tell you that this community and the group of people involved in animation are some of the best people I've ever met. Like, we're all just people. There are good and bad people everywhere. There are, I don't think you're ever going to be inoculated from the possibility of that experience. And I also think that the internet, in a weird way, is like the heightened emotional scream of humanity. And I think that we are hardwired biologically to respond 10 times more to something negative because we're trying to protect ourselves, right? And so when something negative happens, we have a much larger blip, a much larger reaction, and that it piles on top of itself. Whereas something positive, for that to break through, it has to be so much stronger and so many more times. And so it is this thing of like lately I'm like, okay, I need to pointedly try and retweet and share just some positive things for a while, because I think there are all these negative things, but there are really great things too. I just read an article about them potentially finding the root cause of Alzheimer's, and maybe re-engineering a way to kind of get rid of that. And that's amazing that there are these people working on this thing and trying to solve this that causes so much suffering. Like, there are great things happening, incredible, kind, wonderful people. And so I think not letting the internet try and show us what our world is a constant struggle, because, like, look at your daily life. You're not having, racist things screamed at you from across the street. Like, the internet is a weird place for that. I think it distorts our reality so much, and at some point we do have to believe our eyes and ears of the world we experience so much more than that weird caricature.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like, there is definitely some assholes out there, but most people are good, and that is the dominant experience that I have had since joining here, and I try to communicate that some people still don't believe it because they haven't experienced it, so kind of understand. I'm going to make you a really hard question.
Okay.
Let's say you wake up tomorrow in a different dimension, and nobody knows about you. You don't have your work. Pretty much nobody knows who you are, but you still have a place to live, all your tools, all your knowledge and skills, and you have $500 in your pocket. What do you do to get back at this position, professionally speaking, as soon as possible?
So I'm assuming this other dimension is pretty much like our Earth that I'm familiar with now.
Yes.
like it's the same kind of scenario. Okay. Honestly, I think if I still have the same knowledge and everything that I have now, I think the great part about it is that I guess my concern wouldn't be like, 'cause I don't know how to say this without sounding like a jerk, but I don't feel very important or, known, or I don't feel any of those things. Like, if somebody asks to interview me, I'm like, really? Okay. Yeah. It's shocking to me every time. I don't genuinely feel, and I also feel like every job could be my last. That is the feeling that I have all the time. So I wouldn't feel like I had lost this huge thing in a weird way. But I would say for me, I would probably go and get a job that I could put down at the end of the day. I would probably go, if I could figure out a living situation, and a way to get by on like a part-time job at a coffee shop or something that I knew I could do to pay the bills so I didn't have to worry about as much about money. and then just settle into making some work, that's what I would do. I would find a place that would allow me to live while I build up the work. Because to me, if I made the work and established a range of work that showed my consistent ability to do the things that I do, then that work would find me again. I would also probably try and participate in things like CTN and that kind of thing. I think that was really important for me when I was younger. I don't think it has to be CTN. Lightbox could be great. Emerald City Comic Con. Anything where people are. I would absolutely be on Twitter and on social media. And a lot of the reason I would be on there would be to kind of follow other people who do the things that I do and try and keep up with the news of that community and participate in it. I would be applying to jobs in the industry, even if it was like a PA job or something, just to get in and start to get to know people and be involved in that circle so that when jobs came up, I knew about it. So it would be a lot of the same stuff that I do now. Like, I worry about getting work now. I haven't had to worry about it for a little while. I've been very lucky, but I realize that at any time I could just stop getting called, right? Always like, the best use of my time is to figure out a new way of designing something or a way to make something that I really love and share it. And that's going to keep me getting work. And that's what served me. So I would do that exact same thing. And that doesn't mean anything expensive. A lot of the work that I do at this point is like collage on paper with some gouache or something. So $500 would be plenty of money for that. Hopefully that's a good answer to your question, but that is, I think, what would happen.
Awesome. If people wanted to find more about you online, where would be the best place to do so?
Well, there's my website, jennely.com. You can go there to see my work, and then I have some links and things like that set up. I do attend a few conventions, like I'm going to Emerald City Comic Con, and that'll be in Seattle in, I think, March. I'm not sure the exact dates. But if you're going to be around for that, you can obviously like stop by my table there. I have a couple of other interviews floating around online. So if you Google me, I think there's like some Oatley Academy interviews and that kind of thing. Yeah, I would say those are probably the best ways. I'm also on Twitter at Elyjenna, ELYJENNA. I'm also on Instagram under that same title, so you can kind of keep up with, I post pictures of what I'm working on or whatever of the day there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for giving us your time and your knowledge about your experience about being an artist. I really appreciate that.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. It was nice to meet you.
Definitely. So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hustler Show. If you like this, please click the like button below in the video, or if you're watching it from the website, please share it to your friends. Until next time.